For everyone watching, this is Community During Chaos, and this is the third episode. And basically, I'm just trying to foster good conversations during all of the madness that is going on, whether it be coronavirus, whether it be civil unrest, protesting, rioting, police brutality, whatever it might be. I think it's also important to not only speak about the negative things that are going on because this is happening in the news, but also to speak about the positive things that are happening in communities with community leaders during this tough time. So
Absolutely.
Kadence is one of those people. But first, I wanna jump in and just ask, what's it been like for you over the past month or so with all this racial discourse and civil unrest? Like, how has this affected you?
Man, lots and lots of conversation. So honestly, I found out like it seemed like everything kind of happened at the same time for me. So
Mm-hmm.
um I went on a vacation with my family, and it wasn't a vacation, but it was kind of like a little. We got an Airbnb in Tulsa.
Right,
I'm in
right.
OKC, and I was a little disconnected from everything, and so when I came back, um, I was actually getting texts from people and stuff asking if I'd seen the George Floyd video and just all that stuff, and then it was like the Amy Cooper video, the lady at the park. And it was like at the same time. I watched both of those at the same time. I watched one, and I went
Wow.
straight to the next one. And honestly, the first few days, I didn't really want to engage about it or talk about it. I honestly would say probably the first week, I really kind of took a step back. I just have felt like I said everything, in the past when these type of things happen.
Right, right.
I say, I'm one of the people I try to lead the conversation. I try to challenge people, but this time I was just like, man, like I don't have nothing new to offer to this. That's how I
Yeah,
felt. Um, but the cool thing that God did was like people started leading those conversations. Honestly, I say people that don't look like me started leading those conversations, and I was actually being reached out to by people who wanted to talk, wanted to meet up and just have
yeah.
dialogue, just on a relational level. And I've seen a lot of, I've even been healed a lot through it personally. But
Nice.
um, my job, I feel like at this level, especially like in my community and the way I move, is to try to educate other people in their circles so that they can take that information and take based off our relationship and
Mhm.
educate those around them.
Yeah, and I did notice that you were like quiet at least for that first week or so.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of important that I think a lot of people have expectations like you have to post something, you have to say something, you have to do something. But this is affecting people in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the best thing you could do is just be quiet until you figure out the right thing to say or until, you've and I hate to use this term because people throw it back, but until you have all the facts, like until
Yeah.
you've heard people's stories and you've had the facts, like the process for yourself.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the facts of what's going on, but just kind of the facts of like, all right, how is this affecting me? Let me figure it out. How is this affecting my community and everybody around me? And
Yeah.
then when I'm ready, instead of just making a statement that you may not even mean off rip,
Yeah.
you'll be more prepared and you'll be prepared to have those discussions and those dialogues.
Oh man, absolutely. I've learned over the years, I used to be a guy like screaming online all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but I've learned that number one, I'm not trying to blast anybody. You know what I mean? I don't think we win this
Right.
thing by just blasting people or just being confrontational, and aggressive. Because some people, uh, the best way I can explain it is you got some people who live in one bubble and some people who live in another, and they're
Right.
screaming at each other from the perspective of those bubbles. And
Right.
so, the way I've grown up and the way that I've been raised, this conversation to me is a no brainer when we talk
Hmm.
about, the tensions between the police and the black community or, systemic racism. When we talk that stuff,
Hmm.
um, or even just the microaggressions. I think that's one thing that people don't understand. You can't really break that down. You know what I'm saying? It's just a
Mhm.
feeling like something you just know is going on. But if a person is raised in a community where, you know, number one, if you're white and you live in a white community and you don't see any of that,
Right.
then I can't expect you to understand. But what we do have to come to the understanding is I have to understand where you're coming from. You got to understand where I'm coming from, and you have to listen to me. And being in the settings where we're listening to one another, I believe that we'll see more people coming together on these topics. And honestly, you know, the George Floyd video and the way that went down, I believe that there wasn't a lot of conversation to be had, you know, on that one. And
Right.
really, the Amy Cooper joint too. But I just really feel like, man, if we just start listening to one another and just like have a little grace with one another and say, you know, now some people don't get grace because they, you know, it
We
get
know those
it get
people.
yeah, it gets a little wild, right? Because I just really believe that some people they don't want to learn or grow through this. But I believe that it's our responsibility, especially as believers, to seek reconciliation, to seek some level of growth through these things. And it's difficult and it's humbling, and we got to do what it say on your hat, you know, in order to accomplish that by daily. You know what I'm saying? Because we're not, you know what I'm saying? We're not. It's not fun. And so some of the people that's called me to meet up and talk, you know, I'm like, man, do I do this? You know, I want to turn it down. I don't really feel like it. I'm on edge. I'm annoyed. I'm hurt. And you know, just praying about it and saying like, how do we get to a better future if we
Yeah.
can't have these conversations? If someone's calling and saying, man, I really been mulling over this stuff and I want to talk about it. I'm sitting with a millionaire that own an energy company, and he's like, yo, can you give me some information? Like, I mean, not information, but can you just help me understand what's going on?
Yeah.
And from his perspective, he's like, I live in the office. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Hmm.
see nothing going on and I don't pay attention. But, you know, at the water cooler, people talk. And
Yeah.
so he's like, I don't really know. And you're really the only, you know, relationship that I have, you know, outside of my office of color, you know, a person of color. So we sat down, man. We had a whole conversation. I'm telling you, uh, this dude don't mean no harm. This dude
Hmm.
heart was to understand. He doesn't want to just jump on the train of what everybody talking about. He's like, what is going on? Like, what did I miss? Like, explain to me, you know, from your perspective, what you're seeing. And he views me as a person of balance. And so I believe that we can really do some stuff, man. If Cash will start having conversations and being open to learn. And I even told him, I said, man, just talking to you help me, you know, because I
Yeah.
understand like everybody ain't on their phones. This dude don't even have social media. So he's not
Hmm.
even on his phone like that, you
Yeah.
know. So we just
He doesn't know what's trending at the
he
moment, what
doesn't know.
controversy is trending or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and that's a mistake we make, right? Like we assume like if someone's asking a question or if someone's saying I don't get it or don't make sense, that they're automatically racist or they're automatically against us. When in reality, like first of all, as the church, ain't no against us. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
we're a body, so you know if my leg acting up, I need to figure out what's wrong with it so that we can get it back, you know, moving right. So like that's where I'm at with it. You know, I'm trying to talk to people. I'm trying to work it out. I ain't trying to waste my breath on people who don't want to learn at the same time. You know, so when I figure out a person just really want to fight about it, I'm like, yo,
Right.
that's cool. Blessings, moving around. You know, I'm gonna let you go do your thing and be terrible. But you know, outside of that, bro, we could figure this stuff out, man. We can.
Yeah, I think that's important that you brought up because so quickly everyone is very like quickly throwing out, oh, you didn't say anything or you agree with one side, so you're a racist or you're whatever. And a lot of the times it's just ignorance. Like people don't obviously grow up with the same experiences.
Right.
Like you and I did not grow up the same.
Yeah.
And you're from the South, I'm from the North. Like everything about our lives is completely different. So
Yeah.
we can't necessarily understand an experience, but we might have an opinion on it that's wrong because we're only seeing like what we see on TV, or, what we've experienced the one time I may have visited where you live, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But until you actually sit down with someone and have a conversation, like all the memes, all of the links, everything that you're going to share with somebody, all of the standing on your soapbox and social media is never really going to be as effective as me and you sitting face to face. Let me hear the tone in your voice. Let me see the pain in your eyes, whatever it might be. And I think that's really important for people to just have those conversations offline, because that's
Right.
the most impact that I think you're going to make.
Absolutely. And you know what, man, I think that, just speaking even on that, on the online approach, everybody express how they need to express.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, if they're online all the time, then they're going to stay online all the time. Now they're just
Right.
talking about this stuff. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? But for people who aren't on like that, or only post when they like promoting music, or, sharing pictures of their fam, like, they may not feel comfortable doing it that way.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'd say that depending on your level of influence, I don't know how much value sharing online may have, depending
Right.
on who you are. But what I will say is that the relationships that we build between the deaths, between the the issues that come up in the media, that's what matters. When
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff starts calming down, like, are we done trying to reconcile? Are we done having conversations with people that don't look like us, or that wasn't raised like us? Or are we only doing it because this is the trending thing to do?
Right.
Because I believe that when this stuff was happening, when it was Mike Brown, or when it was Philando Castile and all these, Eric Garner, everybody's like, man, we got to figure, we got to work together. But then once all that stuff wasn't in the media no more,
That's it.
nobody, I wasn't getting invited to dinner no more. I wasn't getting invited to have coffee no more. So those relationships stop right there. So
Yeah.
then when it comes back up, it's like, oh snap, I haven't talked to Marcus in a while. Let me call him. So like, I
Yeah.
encourage even myself. It ain't just their responsibility. It ain't just my white friend's responsibility to reach out to me. I think that I encourage everybody in watching, or anybody that whatever, like, it matters what happens in between, because when you
Mm-hmm.
know people, when you have relationships with people, um, then you view the humanity of people. And I believe that sometimes when the media tells you everything you know about a culture, so if some people, the only thing they know about black people is what they see on YouTube or in movies and stuff like that, then they don't understand. They don't see the humanity of us, and or they only see us being athletes, or being, you know what I mean? Like, they only see us
Mm-hmm.
portrayed one way. I believe that when you start to have friends and build relationships, and diversify your circle, you begin to see the humanity in all types of people, and the value in that. I think that's the way heaven is. You know what I mean? Like, heaven is a diverse group of people who love the Lord, and um, if we want to have, if we pray that prayer, the Lord's prayer, on earth as it is in heaven, then why all our friends look one way? Why all our dinner table and lunch tables look one way, and so,
Absolutely.
monolithic? So that's something I think about, and I process, and I'm working on 2020 as a big goal for me to just diversify, my daily interactions, and to try to walk out heaven on earth as it is right now. You know what I'm saying?
It's dope, man. Dope. And as a father, what kind of conversations are you having with your kids right now?
Um, so I have one son who is 15, and then my daughter is 10, and then I got 3-year old. So my 10 and 3-year old, they're little girls, and
Yeah.
man, I'll
Yeah.
be honest with you, I'm not talking to them much about everything right now, outside of just telling them they're smart and beautiful, and their hair is perfect, and their
Yeah.
features are amazing, and
Yeah. Building them up.
yeah, just encouraging them to just love themselves as they are. You know what I mean? Um, and just taking pride, because a lot of shows they watch, it may portray, females a certain way, or portray the stars of the shows may not reflect, them culturally as young black girls and stuff like that. So just
Mm-hmm.
letting them know, like, man, you're awesome. Your hair is great. Your eyes are beautiful. You're super smart. You're super talented. But with my son, he's 15. You know what I'm saying? He's 15
Right.
years old, and he's at that age where you know you stop seeing a little boy. You know what I'm saying? So much. Uh, his voice might be deeper than mine. You know what I'm saying? And so he probably have a beard before me too. But this dude, the conversation I have to have with him is like, it's a sucky conversation to have, but it's just like, just when someone's in authority, you just can't put yourself in a position to make them have to flex their authority.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not worth it. So when you're dealing with police, I mean, I tell them not just cops, but teachers, you know what I'm saying? Just anybody, parents, it's just like, but more so cops, I tell them you can't you can't talk back, you can't roll your eyes, you can't smack your teeth, you can't do all that. Get out of there, and then we'll deal with whatever we need to deal with on the back end. But whatever issue you have with a police officer and they're in authority and they pull you over or they stop you while you're at the mall with your friends, there's nothing to argue about. I don't care how bad you think there's something to argue about. Whatever you feel like you want to argue about it later. Let us handle it. My wife loved
Yeah.
writing letters and emails and making calls and all of that. She'll do it all day, and they won't hear enough of us. So like, we'll definitely we let him know that like we'll advocate for you, and we just need you to just have to show patience and humility, and just know like if this the guy is the guy who's in authority right now, I just need you to get to the house, man. Like finish that, knock it out, let's go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And come home, explain to me what happened, and then as parents, we'll do what we need to do. And I have relationships with the Oklahoma City Police Department. I have relationships
Mm-hmm.
with people in the court system and all of those different things. So like I can track a dude down and make a report, and it would matter, because like they're like, we don't want Marcus online venting
You know,
about somebody doing something
you
to
know
his
who your
son.
daddy is? You know
That's a
who your
bad
daddy
look.
is?
Yeah, so it's a blessing, and a lot of the work I've done in the community, it has put me in a position to be able to do that. But there's so many young boys in the community that don't have dads that do that, that can
Yeah.
do that for them. And so it's a tough, why I feel blessed for my son, and being able to be there for him. I know that there's a lot of young guys who fathers may not be present or may not know what to do or you know, um, what the process is for getting justice when you're
Yeah.
mistreated and stuff. Now I just, so it's bittersweet for me too. But
Yeah.
my son, he's a good kid, man. Like he's really, you know what I'm saying? He's a good kid. He don't even, he just like whatever, man. Like he'll walk off and just go,
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna go home. He don't want to fight about nothing like that.
No, that's good though. But that's good like advice, like good sound parenting. So my last question for you before we hop off is, can you talk a little bit about the Bridge Impact Youth Center that you helped create? I remember when I interviewed you like 3 or 4 years ago, that was still kind of a dream that you were building it, and now it's actually there. And I want to make sure we highlight that community part of what you're doing.
Okay. Real quick. Uh, let's see. A gentle answer turn away wrath, harsh words stir up anger. And so that's something I tell my son all the time. That's in Proverbs. A gentle answer turn away wrath, harsh words stir up anger. But the Bridge Impact Center, um, it is a community center here in the community where I was raised on the east side of Oklahoma City. Um, and I moved back into my community and started to invest into this, basically this property or this facility, and building it up so that we can um, help bridge gaps. We call it the bridge because we want to bridge opportunity gaps,
Yeah.
economic gaps, education gaps, and basically exposure gaps. Like there's so many things kids who grow up in low income communities don't have access to. But we're not. This isn't a program where we're giving, but this is a program where we're saying, hey, we want to give you the tools to succeed, but I'm not trying to like carry you on my back. So
Right.
like that when we say we want to be the bridge and fill those gaps, we're about empowering young people in the community, identifying the leaders, helping them identify their gifts, talents, help them to recognize their identity, not only as an individual, but like their identity as a child of God. Like, how does God see you? And what does God say about you? Because the world's going to tell you a lot of things. And
Mm-hmm.
so once you discover yourself and your identity, then we can say, all right, next step. Let's get you lined up for what you want to do next. So they can come in, they can do music, they can dance, they can do art, they can do coding. If they're struggling in class, like we do different programs like J's for A's. If a kid get a 4.0, we buy them a pair of Jordans. And for
Nice.
people that think that's far fetched, I mean, I do that for my own son. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? It motivates them. It gets them
Yeah,
excited
absolutely.
to get to work. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know about everybody growing up, but like there was a guy in my neighborhood. He'd give us $5 for every A. So I'd be thinking about that in my mind. Like, man,
Mm-hmm.
I need to get some A's, man. I need to work on it. The other side of that, we do discipleship, and then we also have a mental health side just for trauma therapy for young guys, not I always say guys, but the kids in the community that may struggle with that have been through like sexual trauma. If a kid has seen their parents go to jail, if they seen somebody get knocked unconscious in a fight, if they've heard gunshots in their neighborhood, that's trauma, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you live in it, it's normal. You know what I'm saying? So we have a setting where these kids can come in and recognize these traumas and say, this is a normal for you, but this isn't normal. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So this is something you used to, but you're not supposed to be. So let's talk through it and let me tell you the dysfunction of that so we can work through it. So my wife is she's a brilliant therapist, so we have a couple other people as well on our team. And the main focus is like, how can we build a circle around these young people of support, but then also empower them to say, we here, but it's on you. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna give you
Mm-hmm.
every tool you need for you to take charge and for you to be the master of your own destiny and all of that. And I just remind kids all the time that, the potential that God put in you, the fact that you're alive today and you here talking and doing this, there's nothing you can't accomplish. So that's what we do. It's a lot deeper than that, but
Yeah.
that I need another 30, so I ain't trying to take up all the time. We got some other dope people coming on after me.
Yeah. I mean, we can run this back at another point. Real quick, where can people get more information about what you do and all that?
Urbanbridge.org. That's it. Urbanbridge.org. And so, but if you hit me on Facebook or IG, I'll break you off some info as well. We're right now trying to get a title goal of 1,500 recurring donations coming in a month or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and people can give as low as $10 a month, and we're doing that so that we can make sure that we have food and all of the utilities and operations covered, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that every dollar raised can actually go towards college trips, uh, that can go towards materials and items and things we need to like function this thing. So I don't want to spend all our budget just paying the bills of the
Right. Right.
facility. So like that's a real big thing we're pushing right now. We're also a Black-owned nonprofit. That don't mean that we don't have partnerships with people from all over the community, but we are one of in OKC at least. We're one of the rare. That's a rare thing to be Black-owned, Black-ran, and then serving the Black community, our predominantly Black community, or whatever over here. So yeah.
All right, man. That's dope. Everybody, this is Cadence from Die Daily, and
Yes.
he dropped a lot of knowledge on us. And go ahead, check out donateurbanbridge.org. Stay tuned. This is Community During Chaos. We have AI the Anomaly next, and then after her, we have Ruslan.
What's up?
Hey, what's going on?
How you doing?
But yeah, I'm excited to have you on because you're always doing something within your community, and that's the heart of this whole show. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what's this last couple of weeks, this past month been like for you?
Man, it's been It's been interesting. It's been pretty interesting. A lot of emotions, up and down emotions. Busy, very busy already with just a lot of work that I do. A lot of pivoting. With
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic, a lot of things shifted, so I had to, you know, work within that shift, and doing a lot of video conferencing,
Mm-hmm.
workshops digitally, and then with the civil unrest or injustices that that has been going on.
Yeah.
It's been an added thing, an added kind of stress in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and very a lot of emotions, a lot of things are going on when it comes to that.
So just kind of at least processing, I think kind of
Yeah,
along the same lines that Cadence was saying, just kind of like being mindful of, going about how you're going to speak about things, right? And post about things and
exactly,
continue to be who you are with a platform.
exactly. Right. You're
Right.
trying to, one of the rules that I live by is based off of a biblical principle, found in Proverbs, where you you want to be quick to listen and slow to speak, and
Mm-hmm.
which that ideology, it can be found in a book called Seven Habits for Highly Effective People, which says seek first to understand, then to be understood. So I know the way that I move, I'm trying to gather all the information, and then I'm trying to move through that information and then react to that information, and based off of my values and beliefs, and where I feel that I fit within my space. You feel what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of the things that were happening, like let's just focus on pandemic wise. I knew that it was a strength. I work with youth. Like, that's my passion. That's my
Mm-hmm.
heart. That's what I do. That's my full time. I'm an entrepreneur, and that's what I do full time within that,
Yeah.
is work with youth and creativity and arts. So I had to take in what was going on and see how it was affecting me and my family, but
Mm-hmm.
then start to shift and focus and see, well, what am I going to do within the space that I'm already working in? And how am I going to be the best within the spaces where youth are? And so it's the same thing when it comes to the injustices that we see now, and which have already existed for
Right.
time and time.
Right.
So,
Right.
so yeah, just trying to grow and develop within that, but make sure that I'm being effective in the space that I'm already living in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned family and kind of just that dynamic. So, what conversation have you been having with your son, who's a little bit not quite as old as Cadence's son, but still kind of old enough to see what's happening around him?
Yeah. So families first, right? Families are like our first ministry, if you will. I know people say
Yeah.
things like that. So as I was going through, like, because we have two different things happening, which there's a lot of things within those. We got the pandemic, and then we have injustices that I
Yeah.
will once again reiterate has been an ongoing thing throughout history. Um, so with the pandemic, I had to, I'm affected as an individual, but then I have to put myself to the side a little bit and focus in on my family and see how it's affecting my son and my daughter. My son is
Yeah.
12 and my daughter is 3. So they're home all day, every day now during this time. And so I had to, really work with my son to kind of understand. I had to listen to him, really actively listen and
Yeah.
see, how this situation is affecting him. He misses his friends. He wants to be at school. It's just a lot of strains. He's sitting at the table looking at a screen for God knows how long. Um, and then my daughter, who's 3, who has a whole bunch of energy, like, how do I deal with that? So just talking to them and sharing my raw emotion about it as well, and
Hmm.
just being real and helping them work through their emotions. My daughter, she's 3, so it's not as
Yeah.
as like heavy, but
Yeah.
just feeling with her to talk about, like, be patient. Yeah, things are closed down, but here's some other things we can do. when we step over into the injustices and the civil unrest, the protests, the riots, the looting and things like that, when it came to my daughter, she's oblivious of what's going on in that realm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, for me, in my opinion, looking at her and seeing how she moves and seeing what kind of individual I'm working with, even though she's 3, I'm paying attention. I didn't feel it was necessary for me to open up and talk about those things. You know, she's not affected by it right now. Let's keep her pure. But when it comes to my son, I've always been the type where I want to be open and honest, and let's have a conversation and let's talk. And I know that this might sound big and heavy, but for me and how my son operates and how I know my son to be, I had very open conversations with him, and I wanted to hear him and listen to his perspective. Like, how do you feel about X, Y, and Z? I actually sat down and watched videos with him. He saw George Floyd get his neck kneeled down on. He saw the video of the woman who called the police on the man, and
Central Park.
exactly. He sat and watched it, and we discussed it. I had to restrain my son because he was so angry when he saw a video of a young woman and a young man getting tased in their car. I had to walk through these emotions with him. I felt as a parent, and I know this might sound like, man, like he's only 12, but I know my son, and I know that my son has seen things. And so I know he can handle it to a certain extent, but I know me, and I'm going to walk him through this process, and I'm going to actively listen and try to help him to move through his emotions the best way possible. So we talked about things, and then I asked him, I said, hey, Isaac, what if you were to protest, what would your protest look like? Because he, after he explained to me how upset he was that somebody died that he felt for no reason, and just different emotions that he had. And I said, well, people are out protesting. Like, what would be your protest? What he told me is that because he heard about the riots and he heard about the looting and he saw that, he said, well, I want to go out and I want to help clean up. Fine.
Yeah, I saw that.
Let's get some rakes. Let's get some brooms. I'm here for it. I'm here for you with that. If my son wanted to go out and stand in the street and yell and scream and for the purpose, depending on the purpose, remember, I'm going to walk him through things and I'm going to hear him out and also be that voice of reason. If he wanted to go out and say, stop this injustice, stop killing people, stop this, stop that, I would have went out there with him. You know what I'm saying? Now I don't approve of, and this is my opinion, I don't approve of necessarily rioting. If he said, I want to go riot, no, we're not doing that, little man. I want to go loot. No, we're not doing that, because I have to be the voice of reason. I have to go to the scriptures and talk about those things. Like, look, this doesn't fit within our values and beliefs, or at least within this household's values and beliefs. So he wanted to go clean. Thank God. He wanted to go clean up some different stores that we're familiar with, because I am a very huge supporter of small businesses within our community. Yeah. And so we went out and we went, in on the west side, we went to the east side, north, to look and see who needed help and who was open and willing to accept the help. And we cleaned up a lot of different places. And I was proud of my son. And during those times, not to keep talking, but during those instances of cleaning up, we were able to have very valuable conversations with the individuals. So some were white, some were black. Some people were making comments like, because you're cleaning up, your emotions are high. And it's like, what does this change? What does this do? And though I don't agree with looting, and though I don't agree with rioting and burning things down, I understand where that comes from. I don't agree with it, but I understand where it could come from.
Where that anger and that, exactly. Like, I just, when you just want to hit something, you just want to break something. So frustrating.
Right. Yeah, you're frustrated. And depending on where you are, where your mindset is, what circumstances you come from, determines how you are going to react to the circumstances. So I was able to have conversations with individuals who made those comments, and we were able to have an understanding. But my son is there. So he's able to watch me be calm, cool, collected, and to have these conversations with individuals to help them see something. So that in itself could be protest. That in itself could be, whatever. But, anywhere I am, I'm going to speak the truth. And I want to listen. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Be slow to speak, quick to listen.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm sure you were so proud of your son for actually wanting to do it that way. Like hearing about all
Yes.
this and being angry, but then saying, you know what, let's go serve.
Yep.
That's like a totally different, like
Yeah.
you think about, I didn't know you as a teen, but even thinking about me as a teen, it's like, no, I'm angry. Like, I don't care. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But at 12 years old, to have kind of the fortitude to be like, let's go clean up, let's go help people. That's amazing. And that shows, your parenting, like you said, him. And I think that's important for every parent to speak to their kids in a way that they know that they can react. And just like you said, your daughter is not ready for that conversation. My daughter is also 3 years old.
Right.
So the only thing that she knows that's going on is there are a lot of sick people outside and we can't go outside, but we can go play in the backyard. Like that, like that's it. So, obviously,
I'm glad that we were able to protest in that way. That, like, out of my son's mouth, this is my protest. So that's what he wanted to do in a sense of protest. And we went to, other demonstrations and stuff like that too. But it was interesting to me for him to say that, like, this is my protest. I was like, yeah, you're a little dope dude. Little dope dude.
No,
So,
that's awesome because you see things like that and you're like, he's on the right track, or whoever this might be. When you have a kid,
crossed. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping. He's gonna make his own choices and decisions, but it's my job to give him all that I have, and to be able to be balanced. I try not to feed him what I believe. I'm going to present to him what I believe, but I want to hear him out. I want to talk through it, so.
No, that's great. And talking about more of the community stuff that you do in Buffalo, you have the Get Focused Productions.
Right.
And can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of the other community stuff that you're doing, especially, now with everything that's going on?
So Get Focused Productions is a company that I began some years ago, maybe like 8 years ago or so, but just in the last 3 years, I was able to go full time. And so the whole mission is capture, teach, and give back. And so we capture through photography and film, telling stories, teach young people and adults and community leaders, companies, entrepreneurs about the magic of photography and how to tell stories through that. And then we give back by investing in the next generation of creatives. So every contract that I earn, and I do the same thing on the music side, but every contract that I earn, I'm taking a portion of that and I'm investing it into the next generation by purchasing resources they feel like they need, putting time and effort and energy, doing interviews, putting them on, highlighting what they do, and just serving them, because I need them to get all that I have so that they can go on and be great. So when it comes to now, according to your question, and when it comes to right now, what I did was I had to shift and I had to focus, like, okay, what do these students that I've highlighted need? And so I met up with them through Zoom to teach them some skills as far as photography is concerned, checking in on them, just mentorship type stuff, just checking in on them, seeing how they are doing. How are they using their art to make statements if they want to, having them understand that they can do that, if they don't feel comfortable out into the the street and doing, protesting or what have you, that they do have a voice, and there are other ways and forms to protest, that you can use art, that you can write
Yeah.
poetry. So through my business, I work a lot with youth, and I do creative writing workshops, do photography workshops, video, and things like that. So in the virtual classes, I shifted everything. I said, look, what we're going to focus on is stuff that you guys are concerned about right now. And those kids, man, they are hurting, and they don't know what to do. And all of the virtual classes that I was in, they express that they're angry, they're frustrated, they don't know what to do with themselves or their time. And so I tried to tell them, like, look, let's use these words. Since we're doing creative writing, let's use your words as your protest. And so with one group that I'm working with, it's called the Yale program, Youth Empowerment and Leadership. Those students are writing poetry in response to what's going on, and we're going to take that poetry and create a book. And so,
Awesome.
and they're also doing photography along with that. So we're going to create a book. And in that book also is going to be spaces in which other youth can write in it. So it'll be prompts.
Okay.
The prompts
Yeah.
that I've had for them so they can write are going to be the prompts that are in the book. So it's interactive, if you will. So yeah, doing that and just, trying the best that I can with what I have, just trying to be of support to these different spaces, and being of support to small businesses with Get Focused Productions. As far as the pandemic was concerned, a lot of the small businesses in my city were like imploding because of the circumstances. So I was like, you know what? Let's like, what do I have to give? I'm creative. I love photography. I love film. I love writing music. Like, how can I use all of these skills to create something that can be engaging for the community, but yet raise funds to support small businesses? So I had
Right.
this weekly focus, and we were able to raise a little over $500 and give it to different small business owners. It's not a lot of money, but I mean, a little is a lot when you got God in it. That's what
Yeah.
they say.
Yeah.
But just to kind of support the small businesses, and yeah, so just trying to find ways to support in any facet I can.
Yeah, and you actually answered my next question for you about, using art and creativity as a means
Right.
to kind of express pain or deal with pain. So I know your story yourself, that's how you got into writing, right? Was
Exactly.
to express pain. So I think just you having a firsthand knowledge of, hey, if you're doing something creative with
Yep.
yourself, you can become something greater. You can make something. You can go all in, which is
Exactly.
your name.
Exactly.
So
And you
yeah.
can see, like, and when I was talking about this not too long ago, you can look at our circumstance right now and see how important art is. Because when you didn't have to go to work anymore because of the pandemic, when your kids are at home, when everything has like paused, what did people do? They danced, they sang, they drew, they painted. Art is important. It's important, and it's interesting how it gets pulled out of schools. But that's another
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. I think it's also amazing that so much time during this period has been invested in family. Like you've
Yes.
had to stop that hustle and bustle of commuting, especially being in New York or myself, New York City area. Everyone's commuting, there and back. It's almost 3 hours a day. And then you're at work all day, and then you get home and you're exhausted, and you have dinner, and then you watch TV, and then you go to sleep. And then, you're not having these conversations, these moments of, let's do, arts and crafts together, even with your kids, or let's go outside, or let's have a catch, or let's go for a walk. And now everyone's kind of like forced to do that. It's like, oh man, like, how do I interact with my family all day? This is weird, for a lot of people. So I think that's really cool because despite, that chaos that is going on, at the same time, something like this may never happen again within our lifetimes, where
Right.
you're just stuck with your family all
Yeah.
day for like 3 months. Almost,
Yeah.
almost for some people, it's kind of a vacation. for other people, they're still doing a ton of work or they're out of work, but at the same time, like you're home with the people you love, a lot of people.
Right, right. And
So
it really allows you, like, I get to see, I get to really see like my kids in a different way, because usually they're at school,
mhm.
they're at their different things, but man, like looking at my son and just really seeing him in another aspect, seeing my daughter in another aspect. And I spend a lot of time with my kids anyway,
Yeah.
but this is a lot of time. Like, man. And it's been cool, it's been cool, and it's been challenging. It's been frustrating. It's been annoying sometimes, but ultimately, I feel like we've grown so much. We've grown so much tighter as a family
Hmm.
unit, and even with my husband, like being able to be around him more and us having these little conversations late at night, because that's the only time really. But it's man, I love my family. I really do. I really do. I'm loving this time that we have together. But I mean, there's summer camp coming, so there's gonna be time for them to step away for a little bit. But yeah, I've enjoyed the time.
When everything opens up, though, you're going to see parents taking vacations, but not vacations from work. It's like, I just need a little vacation from my kids for just a couple
From
of
all of
days.
you.
Uh, yeah, I mean, very thankful. I mean, I work from home anyway, but my wife does it, and I have a 9-month-old son, and you do the 3-4 months
Oh,
of maternity
listen,
leave, and then she
yeah.
had to go back to work, but she only went back to work for 3 months, and then she gets to come back and be with
That's kind of
our
perfect
baby.
though, man. That's kind of worked out in her
That
favor.
definitely worked out for her, and she had just started that job. So it was basically she started the job, went on maternity leave a day
Wow,
later, then came back after 4 months, worked 3 months, and now is home again. I was like,
man.
you've been home longer than you had this job. They must really like you to keep you around. This is Community
Yeah.
During Chaos, and we're highlighting artists who are doing great work in their communities during a chaotic time. We had Kadence on in the beginning. Up next is Ruslan. I want to give AI the opportunity to just say one more thing before we move on to Ruslan.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is pray, push, persevere, go all in everything that you do. Making sure that you're putting everything that you can into what you do, and be balanced. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, be balanced and be careful. Be careful exploding your emotions in a space, especially social media. Like, be careful of that, and
Mm-hmm.
be careful of following trends just because, like, oh, this is the thing to do. Let me do this. And when it dies down, like, we gonna see who you are. Like, just be you. Just be
Mm-hmm.
you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, if people want to support me, AI the Anomaly, you can follow. Um, but definitely follow with purpose. Follow because you feel like something that I'm saying and whatever I'm doing is interesting. And
Yeah.
follow me on Get Focus Productions and Young and Focus. Yeah, like I said, pray, push, persevere. Everything you do, go all in.
Yeah, and for everyone watching, she's also a really good rapper. Like she seems
Yeah,
like a really good mom and small business owner here, which she is, but she's also a really good rapper. So you could follow her for good raps too.
I might have a project coming out soon.
All right, we'll have to talk about that. We'll have to talk about that on another live.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but thank you
It's
so
been
much.
dope. I
Yeah, I
appreciate it.
no, I appreciate you and keep up the good work that you're doing. I love following you and seeing everything that you're doing, and I knew you were someone we had to get on here. Um,
Appreciate it.
so keep being an awesome mom too.
All right. Shout out to God Over Money.
Got over money, GOM.
All right. Peace.
So everybody who's tuning in, this is Community During Chaos, where we highlight, with all the negative things that are going on in the world, we want to highlight some of the positive things that are going on despite this chaos.
Yes.
So we've had Kadence from Die Daily, we had AI the Anomaly, and now I am here with Ruslan. So
Yeah.
the first thing I want to ask you is when you observe and see everything that's gone on in the last month concerning the race dialogue, protest, how has that all affected you?
I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm an abundance guy. I believe, there's enough for everybody to get theirs and to prosper and to win. And I think this has been a very interesting time, man, in terms of the from the corona to the the protests. It's a very wild time. So all in all, I'd say that it was initially confusion and shock. It was stuff that we kind of think about stuff like this, right? Not specifically corona, but you think about, like, I remember living through the '08 recession and remembering things like getting really tense for a minute. So it's not like foreign to me, but I think with the subsequent protest after George Floyd, I wasn't sure how bad it was going to get. Right, I wasn't sure how bad it was going to get, and the media, unfortunately, and I guess fortunately, but unfortunately, misrepresented a lot of what was going on with those protests. The overwhelming majority of them were peaceful. The overwhelming majority of them, I think, were helpful. There's a lot of laws that have changed because of the protest and because of the public outcry. There's something called the 3% rule that says that if you can get 3% of a population engaged in protesting on a matter, that the rest of the majority and eventually legislative change happens. This is how dictators are overthrown. This is how nations are overthrown. It's called the 3% rule. And we're right there, right? So 50,000 people show up in Los Angeles in protests like that we're right on those ratios for things to actually start to change. So from that perspective, I'm hopeful. Initially, it was very confusing, and it was very like, wow, this is an unprecedented time. We've heard that over and over, right? So fear, anxiety, and then like, okay, I'm hopeful, and I'll give you very specific ways why I'm hopeful. I think with COVID specifically, it seems like the cases are spiking through the roof with protests and everything that's happening, but the deaths aren't spiking. And the more people get diagnosed, it seems like the mortality rate is very low, which begs to differ. Like, were we really operating from motives of like, hey, we want to help people and we just want to protect the elderly? Or were we flexing and the governors were flexing their legislative powers and the president was trying to flex his power? And this dynamic of power is very interesting. In terms of the George Floyd stuff, I think all these laws getting passed and people finally awakening, right, to this issue of racism that is really classism masked as racism, meaning that we've always had classism. America just made it unique with slavery and racism. Now here you could identify people's class based on their race, right? It's like a one up. There's a great pastor named Dr. A.R. Bernard who did a great talk on this topic. And so the whole thing that this made me realize was that, man, there really are people in positions of power, not on some like Illuminati stuff, but just like people in power who want to maintain power and want to flex power. And anytime their power is threatened, they'll do whatever it takes to conserve their power, right? And I think that is from the COVID. We saw that with COVID, right? All of a sudden, it's like, we're going to tell you what not to do and where you can't go and you can't leave your house. And it's like, wait a minute, like, okay, like, you're going to tell me I can't step outside of my house? Like, that sounds a bit, you're impinging on my rights there. And then to the police brutality thing, and you're seeing a lot of these police unions that don't want to give up power, right? You see a lot of these, some of these, not a lot, but some of these police officers that don't want the laws to change, right? You see some Christians that don't want to acknowledge that there's an issue at all. They don't even want to acknowledge that there's an issue. It's all made up. And Black people are making it up. They've been making it up this whole time. Or they'll dismiss you with, well, you're just a socialist, Marxist, communist who just wants to perpetuate white privilege, and right. And so this, by the way, the very same things they said about MLK. You know what I'm saying? The very same things they say about MLK, they're saying about us. They're saying about me. They're saying about Lecrae. They're saying about a lot of guys who are like, yo, I come from real communism. Like, I really came from communism.
You came from the Soviet Union.
From the Soviet Union, right? And that was real communism. So like, no, Stalin isn't going to be on some like Black Lives Matter or white privilege is a thing. Like, that's not communism, fam. That's not what that is. Like, so it's a lot of just deflection. And I think it all goes back down to people wanting to control and preserve their power. They want to control power. And this is revelatory to me. I never really understood that. I've always thought abundance. Everybody could get it. We can all make money. We can all build wealth. We can all pass down property to our kids. We can all be successful. This is the first time where I'm like, wow, there's people who don't want other people to be successful. And so racism or classism or COVID are like tools they use to play with our emotions and gaslight us into thinking we're somehow crazy. You know what I mean? And it's and again, not to say I don't want to think COVID's a hoax or anything like that. Practice social distancing, follow the protocols, all that good stuff. But it just goes to show, man, that they're just telling us to do whatever they feel like telling us to do. And by they, I mean like the government, you know what I mean? These scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I don't know. It just seems very telling how much people love their power.
Yeah, I think on the coronavirus tip, it's also a lot of this never happened to our modern society before. Like the U.S. has always been seen as like we're impenetrable. Like, wars don't happen in here, rioting in the streets don't happen here.
Right.
We don't get diseases and famine and all that. And then it happened, and everyone's like, oh, what do we do? Like that episode of The Office with the fire. I don't know if you've watched The Office, but yeah. So it's like someone pulled the fire alarm, but you've never done a fire drill. So it's like, what do we do? Let's maybe we should overreact. Maybe we should underreact. Maybe we should just sit in the fire.
Right.
Like everybody kind of had a different answer. Me being in New York is a lot different experience during this time than someone say in Montana,
right,
or North Dakota,
right,
or a place that had maybe 20 people got it, while in New York, we had almost 200,000 people who got it or more. So I think perspectives are also different. I don't want to give the government too much credit that they were just acting in our best interest, but I would like to think people are trying to do the best they can. And I think everyone is kind of trying to do the best they can in some way or shape, but people just don't know what that best is. And I think that's the same thing. And we kind of mentioned it with Kadence before, going back to, racism and having those discussions too. Everybody has a different experience.
Right.
Like somebody who grew up in a deeply racist part of America is going to have a completely different outlook on it than someone who grew up in, say, I'll just throw New York City again, that has every race and person imaginable just walking around. The day-to-day experience is totally different.
Right.
And it might not necessarily be racism. It just might be ignorance to, that's an experience I don't know. So I can't get behind it. So people need to be educated.
Yeah.
I just think there's so many, it's a multifaceted issue, but when you have people with platforms that are willing to be those educators and willing to speak to people and have those tough conversations, I think it's more important than ever.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, there's just a lot of stuff that's revealing the DNA of like who we really are. Right. So with Louis Giglio, you know what I mean? The most powerful pastor in Christian entertainment. I don't think we kind of brushed over that, but like, let's keep it a buck. Like my man runs Passion Conference. That's the biggest
that's huge
Christian conference ever. For him to sit there with Chick-fil-A, Dan Cathy, billionaire, right? Billionaire. And then for them to want to have a dialogue about race and then bring Lecrae, who I love Lecrae, but like Lecrae is an entertainer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if Lecrae identifies as an activist. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know, versus like a Show Baraka or propaganda, right? And for him to sit here and, you know what I mean, do the whole like white blessing thing. Like,
it's tough to say. It's really tough to say.
It is so telling of where Christianity is. Like, it wasn't just a gaffe. It wasn't just like he misspoke. No. He thought this through.
He believed it
and presented it like it was like a great revelatory idea to what? To soften the blow of white privilege, right? And so like this pastor created this great, this to him, great metaphor to soften the blow of this social construct that's fairly obvious to most of us anyway. I'd like to think so. And presented it to a black man's face, like, seriously. You know what I mean? And like, and so now,
Kind of as like buddy buddy, like, you know what I'm saying? You know
you
what
know
I'm
what I
saying?
mean? Yeah, like, and it's just like,
You
bro,
feel me?
this is a microcosm of, I think, what's happening with the church right now is these false ideologies, these subtle and subconscious white superiority complexes that have been like underneath the surface for a very long time are coming to the light. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing that these things are being
Yeah.
exposed. And it's not to say that Louis Giglio is outright racist and hates black people, right? Because I think he saw his own covert, subtle superiority complex. And it's just the whole thing, the way the whole thing was set up was just like, wow, this is really fascinating that they would have this, you know what I mean? And I don't know if you saw the whole video, but like at one point, Dan Cathy gets up and shines Lecrae's shoes. You know,
That was even weirder. If it could be weirder, that was even weirder.
cringe, bro, cringe.
Um,
And so
yeah,
it's just, I say all that to say, I'm happy that these things are being brought to the surface because at least now we know where everybody is. Like we could check the temperature and we could say, oh no, there's a lot more work that needs to be done in our space, right? In the Christian space, there's a lot. Like I have to keep on talking about this. I don't care if I lose followers. I don't care if I lose subscribers. I
hmm
have, and it's all the opposite is happening for me, nevertheless. But
that's cool.
and I've been talking about this stuff. Anybody who's listened to my music, who's kept up with my YouTube channel, we've been having these conversations with Propaganda, with Joseph Solomon, with, Preston Perry. We've been having these conversations on my channel, and it always makes people uncomfortable. And I think there's also a lot of preconceived notions and preconceived attachments to what these things mean. So if structural racism or systemic racism exists, which I believe it doesn't mean that all white people are at fault and that white people need to walk around guilty and ashamed. You know what I mean? It means that if you're white, you've in some way benefited from society viewing you, back to the classism thing, in a different class on a superficial level. Now, how do we make that right? I think reparations is a good idea. I think changing a lot of the laws is a good idea. More funding for HBCUs, which Donald Trump has done, oddly enough. I think all these things are helpful, but we aren't even acknowledging them. You know what I mean? And I think that's
hmm
that's again very telling, like very telling that we don't want to acknowledge them, and we rather be more concerned with coddling people and being careful about their feelings, when in any other situation we would just call it what it is. And again, it's white privilege does not mean white guilt. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to feel guilty or like you're supposed to feel ashamed. That's the extreme version, and people always take the extreme version and think that's the normative position. You know what I mean? And it's just not.
All right, so that was question one. that was a long question. So for everybody just tuning in, because you may have been completely lost if you just came in, this is Community During Chaos, and I didn't say this one time. My name is Justin, and we at Rapzilla decided to have these hard conversations every week, but also have them with people who are out there in their communities making a difference, so we can focus on some of the positive things and positive changes and solutions.
Yes.
So we had Kadence from Die Daily. We had AI the Anomaly from God Over Money. And now we have Ruslan of King's Dream. So my second question to you is, obviously you must spend a lot of time kind of like doing your research and reading and formulating opinions. Do you feel that that's necessary in order to be somebody who's going to foster these discussions? Like, do you feel like whenever you're going to speak on something, like you need to be like 100% there, otherwise, you might leave it alone?
I think it is important to know what you're talking about, and I'll take it a step further, to know the other side's perspective. So
I agree.
oddly enough, I do like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, and I do think that some of their views are valuable, right? And some of their positions are valuable. But I just think they're flat out wrong on race. You know what I mean? Like I just think they're wrong. But I know what I know the Jordan Peterson talking points that are going to be sent to me, or the what's the guy's name, Vadi, the pastor, you know what I mean, the black pastor who doesn't think
Okay.
or Candace Owens. I know those talking points. I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with those positions. So I think it's important to know what you think based on the evidence and being informed. I also think it's important to understand the other position. I think it's good to know that the earth is round, but I have some basic premise that there's people out there that believe the earth is flat and space doesn't exist. I understand what as silly as their argument is, I
Yeah.
understand it. Like, I get it. And therefore I can gauge, like, do I even want to go here with you? Or am I just going to let you be because you're just too far gone? Because there's certain flat earthers you talk to that are just too far gone. Like, there's no reeling them back into, there's no showing them a video, there's no explaining anything to them. They're just far gone. And I think that within this conversation, there's a spectrum here, right? There's a spectrum of people. So I put together a video called Frequently Asked Questions, Unhelpful Responses to Black Lives Matter. And it's about an hour and 10 minutes. And so what I did is I just put one video together. I put timestamps. I chopped them up in smaller videos for Instagram that I thought were helpful. And anybody that I made it for the YouTube, but anybody who had questions or wanted to engage with me, instead of going back and forth over DM or comments or whatever, I would just say, hey man, watch this entire video and then shoot me a DM if you have follow-up questions, and we could hop on a Zoom call. And so I've been doing Zoom calls with people, fans, not fans, just random people, majority fans. And they've been super helpful. Because once they get through an hour and 10-minute, video explaining all the rebuttals to this stuff, then they're like, oh, wow, gosh, I never saw it that way. Didn't think about that, right? And it's like, well, yeah, because there's information out there that's outside of your paradigm, right? And that's out of minds as well, you know what I mean? And so I think it's always learning and being hungry for information and being curious.
First of all, I want to say that already this conversation has everything because it went to flat earthers.
Oh yeah, we talk about it all.
Unprompted. Like this will be the last discussion we ever have to have. So like this is fine. Like this is going well. I think it is important what you said too, because I think one of the gripes that I have within Christianity is people who have the creation evolution debate. Now I'm about to take it somewhere else, but a lot of people defend creation by saying, hey, look at, the Bible, or they defend the Bible by pointing to the Bible. But remember, you're having an argument with somebody who doesn't believe in that book, doesn't believe in the Bible. To them, it's Lord of the Rings, it's Harry Potter, it's whatever. So you need to come with some sort of real life evidence within your life or within what you've seen around you, maybe even some historical evidence or data that completely doesn't mention the Bible because they don't believe in the Bible anyway. So if you actually know your stuff and you're living it out and you have these fruits and these things, you should be able to provide that evidence. So I think that's kind of important. Like you said, know both sides of an argument, because if you don't know what they're coming from, then you'll never understand why they may have these questions or think the way they do.
100%.
All right. So my next question to you is, I saw that you were out on some of these protests and you did a lot of photography. You took some great pictures and things like that. Were you able to be kind of a bigger picture part of any of these, or like any community work? Were you able to have dialogues and discussions like out on the streets?
Yeah, I think no, I wasn't leading a protest. I wasn't marching. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't
You're kind of just observing.
Well, marching with them, right? So marching with them, being at the protest in solidarity with the causes that they desire of the protest. But no, I was not in a position of leadership. And that's something that, again, like if we go back to the idea of power, right? Like I don't need to be in a position of leadership in a Black Lives Matter protest. I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to be in a position of education and learning and being teachable. I used to be on staff at a church. I've led tons of Bible studies. I'm in a Bible study right now. I am not the leader of that Bible study. I don't want to be the leader of that Bible study, right? I need to just be okay with sitting and learning. And that to me is important, because I do have influence. I need to be in a place where I can be taught and I can be educated and I can have my views developed further. And so, no, I was not there on some like leadership type stuff. I much rather let Black people lead in these discussions.
Absolutely.
And if they need my voice, or if they're asking for my voice, I rather come alongside and just say, hey, you guys don't need to explain all this. Like, we don't need you to explain this if you don't want to. I got it. You know what I mean? I'll do the explaining. I'll hop on a Zoom call. I'll talk to people privately so that, Rockstar JT doesn't feel like he has to respond to every single, well, what about Black Lives Matter and black on black crime? Where Rockstar JT, like, I don't want Rockstar JT, you know what I'm saying, who's processing his own trauma and seeing people that look like him get
Yeah.
killed in these viral videos to have to respond to these DMs or belief or whoever, right? So I have so many people. So I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I'll have those conversations. I'll take the time to have those conversations. And when it comes to the leadership of the movement, I don't need to be in a position of power for what? You know what I mean? It goes back to that whole like power dynamic. Like there's a lot of rappers and a lot of people, even in Christian hip hop, that want to be popping for the sake of being popping. They want to have influence for the sake of having an influence. And I believe influence comes as a byproduct of being effective and timing and providence and relationships. So I don't want to be in a position where I just want clout and want power. That's very dangerous, very unchecked. You know what I'm saying? I rather just be in a position where I'm humble, I'm teachable, and I can get behind other people and
Yeah.
and prop them up and let them be voices. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's dope. Now I'm curious on your background because you were an immigrant from Russia, or what is now known as Russia today.
Mhm.
I don't remember how old you were when you got here, but did you ever kind of experience racism in a way, or kind of were able to relate to minorities more because you came from another country, you spoke a different language, you were poor, right? Kind of growing up, like it was a tough time for you. So were you able, like, did you relate more to minorities, and did you ever experience racism yourself?
I re very well early on was able to tell that the black kids in my neighborhood that lived in my apartment complex were treated different by my white neighbors, by the teachers and the
Mm-hmm.
principals, by the um, law enforcement. Even I was able to tell at an early age that they were treated differently, unfortunately. And so at an early age, I understood that, like, oh man, that's kind of whack. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's not fair. Like that just seems, this teacher seems way more patient with me than he does with my friend Steven. You know what I mean? And so that's interesting. And so, furthermore, I've fairly well traveled. I've traveled the majority of of the United States. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I've seen treatment different. I've gotten on an airplane uh, with belief and watched how he was spoken to and how I was spoken to, and knowing that they didn't know that we're the same group, we're the same friends, or going to a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant, or like I have multiple situations like that where I've just seen people treated foul. You know what I mean? And then on a personal level, I've also had people in my life who have been killed, unarmed black men in my life, like friends and acquaintances, the funerals I've attended that have been killed by police. So it's not just like, oh, these are these anecdotal situations. It's like I've been to 7 or 8 funerals. 2 of them were of unarmed black men killed by police before there was hashtags and Twitter. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? This is one of them was about 2 years ago, and one of them was like 2005. Neither one of them was armed. I think both of them could have been de-escalated. You know what I mean? Neither one of them had guns. Neither one of them were arms. Both of them could have been de-escalated, in my opinion. And so it's also real for me. Like it's not just
Yeah.
like it's not just like, oh, I'm looking at statistics and math. It's like, no, fam. This stuff happens. Like this stuff happens far more often than we think than we think it does. Um, and so this whole like, well, black, it's not that common, and it's like, well, hey, if we're gonna say we got to care for our police, like, fam, being a police officer isn't a top 10 most dangerous job. So we're gonna talk about, hey, shout out to my homie Namas, R.I.P. Keith Childress. That was one of the kids that was in our teen program that got killed by a police officer. Me and him attended his funeral together, man, and yes, it was awful. The the issues are just so obvious to me. You know what I mean? Like they're just so obvious that it's unfortunate that we can't acknowledge that there's like, why can't we just be like, yeah, black people kind of got a raw deal when it comes to how they're viewed in society? Like, I don't get it. Like, I really don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Like, the only way you get over an issue is acknowledging first that there's an issue. And for whatever reason, we just want to be like, nah, they're making it up. They're being victims. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, bro, like all my peoples, all my black friends are not victims. They're all highly successful. They're all entrepreneurial. They're all amazing husbands, amazing fathers, running businesses, crushing it. You know what I mean? And even the guys that are protesting, like I don't know if you're keeping up with Trey Little's story, but Trey Little just was on the front. He was actually on the front lines in a protest in Detroit. And you know, Trey Little's an entrepreneurial TikTok star, a Dave Ramsey fan. You know what I mean? Who's like,
yeah.
This dude is not on no like, oh, woe is me. Like, so the notion, it's just so many false connections, man. So sorry, I'm giving you very long answers, but
It's fine.
that's
It's
hard.
fine. I told you that this might not happen again. Yeah, M59 Crow, if that's how you say your name, you're right. Said poor white kids experience classism in America, not racism. I guess I meant my question more so in terms of like, could he relate to the struggle because of, how he grew up and being around, having black friends when he came here and growing up. But you're absolutely right. Let me ask you this. So you have a biracial son. So what kind of conversations are you and your wife having with your son, and how is he dealing with it?
Yeah, I think we had to introduce the topic of race because and what it is because he didn't quite understand. Like he knows dad is Russian and he speaks Russian. You know what I'm saying? And mom is brown, right? Like that's as deep as it was. And so we had to explain to him what racism was and how it's viewing people unfairly. Because Belief had the conversation with his kids and they're close. Like my son and his sons are close.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew that it was going to come up at some point. You know what I mean? And so we rather him hear it from us instead of him hearing it from his friends, and then that just how that's going to come out is going to be weird. You know what I mean? So we had just a basic like, hey, here's what racism is. It's not okay, and you're created in the image of God. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. You have limitless potential, right? And affirming that stuff in him a lot, and saying, your daddy's Russian. Mommy is black, right? Or he said, he like didn't understand. He's like, I'm not black, and mommy's like, no, black is a culture. It's culture,
Yeah.
So she was like, are you black? And he was like, yeah, I'm black. Like, so he kind of got it, you know what I mean? But he didn't at first. And then we haven't opened the can of worms of like police and systems and all that kind of stuff. He's 5. I think it's too young. But our thing was, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You're made in the image of God, and and we're gonna go do something about it. We're gonna go protest. We're gonna go march. You know what I mean? We're not just gonna sit here and just say this to you. We're actually gonna. And so we, because of COVID and some other stuff, me and my niece marched. My wife and my son saw the protest. We're there at the beginning of the protest and kind of hung out. They didn't march with us, but yeah, he went to a protest, man, and I think it was good for him to just be aware of how beautiful his culture is. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think Armenians take a lot of pride in. I'm a half Armenian, half Russian, FYI.
Okay.
Armenians take a lot of pride in being the first Christian nation, right? There's debate on if it was Ethiopia or Armenia. It's a toss-up, you know what I mean, who it was. But Armenians are really about that. Like, we were the first Christian nation. There's other stuff. They're like, Armenians have like a degree of like cultural pride, right? And I just think it's interesting that in America, the majority of like the flyest things that have been contributed to American society, minus the internet and the iPhone, you know what I'm saying, and some technological advances, have been contributed by Black people and Black culture, specifically going back to the Black church experience. And I think we need to celebrate that. And I think we need to acknowledge that. And I want him to acknowledge that the blood that flows through his veins is it's amazing. It's powerful. It's creative. It withstands adversity. It keeps pushing through on both sides, right? Because Armenians had 1915 genocide, which I'm never told to get over that, by the way. No one ever tells and grills Armenians to get over the 1915 genocide and tells us to shut up and stop talking about it, right? But the way people tell Black people to get over slavery, which was like, you know what I mean, 65? You know what I'm saying? Like the way they tell black people to get over civil rights, which was 1960s. Interracial marriage wasn't banned in Alabama until the year 2000. But it's
Really? Wow.
that is a fact, right? So it's like, come on, fam, like you don't tell the Jewish people to get over the Holocaust. Like, oh, you guys need to get over the Holocaust. Oh, you're living in the past. But like black people want to celebrate Juneteenth, or black people want to have acknowledgement for their trauma and the stuff that their ancestors endured. And it's like, oh, stop, you're living in the past. There's just so many little double standards like that I'm just like, come on, like you really mean to tell me that like everybody is treated equally in society, like in American society? Like, get out of here.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Even the whole statue debate, like Jewish people or people in Poland or probably even the European side of Russia. There's definitely not any monuments of Hitler or concentration camps or anything over there. I'm I'm half Jewish technically, but like country wise, it's like Polish, Russian sort of mix. And I know from that side of my family, a lot of those people came to America to escape the Holocaust. So they went to South America. I have a bunch of like Jewish family members that live in Argentina that speak Spanish, which is ironic because I'm also half Puerto Rican. But it's my Jewish ones that speak the Spanish. I don't. But anyway, so it's like, yeah, like different cultures aren't asked, like you said, to get over things. Like the Holocaust is such like I guess a sacred taboo subject for Jewish people, for Polish, Ukrainians, like that whole section of Europe, and everyone still feels really bad about it, as they should. But like kind of slavery and civil rights and all that, which was 400 years of it, not 4 years of it, is kind of like, just kind of get over it. And I've had this conversation all the time. Think about how long it takes for like a generation, how long a generation is. Like one generation ago is my parents, and then one before that is my grandparents and my great grandparents. Now you're talking about great grandparents. Now you're in the 1880s or 1890s. That's over 100 years ago. And slavery only left maybe 30 years before that, 40 years before that. And when you talk about the civil rights in the 60s, think about how much you could actually accomplish, in one generation if you're already all the way behind. And it's hard. Like every person, as I'm sure people in your situation, they come to America to try to get a better life, right? But when you're already here and your life kind of sucks and you were already supposed to be here, how long is it going to take to get out of that process? And 60 years is not nearly enough time, I would say, for most people. Just like a lot of Jewish families and people and that whole culture hasn't fully recovered even from the Holocaust. And that's about 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're not dealing with long lengths of time. It's not like biblical times or like medieval times when you're talking about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Technology is the world is a completely different place.
Right.
So I think a lot of people forget that. And that's something that we have to be mindful of. Like, you're just talking about people's grandparents or some people's parents. There's not all this time that's passed by.
Good. Yeah, man. That's a really good point.
You said that you've actually haven't lost too many followers due to having these discussions and everything. So for the fans that you do lose, is it like hard to kind of deal with that at first, or at this point you're just like, see ya, I'm on to the next one? Like, would you try to like fight to save people to keep them so that they can hear your points, I guess is what I mean.
I feel like if anybody's a fan, really a fan of what I'm about and has been keeping up, that the stuff I'm talking about now is not anything new. I was talking about Americana. You know what I mean? Like I talked about stuff. I was talking about these concepts then, racism, white privilege, like all these things I've been talking about. So I think anybody that's been following me knows that this is stuff I've talked about for years, right? And with that in mind, if they're a true fan of me, they're not really leaving, like, because they already know what I'm on. They know my wife is black. They know that you know what I mean? Like, if anybody that knows my story is like, they're not going anywhere. They may disagree, but they're the ones that are willing to hop on a call and talk to me instead of like dismissing me as a Marxist, socialist, derelict, crazy guy, right? The casual fans, I don't really care for. right? So there's like casual Christian rap fans that kind of like discovered me from Rapzilla, and they're just kind of like, I'm
Yeah.
one of 25 Christian rappers they follow. Those people I don't really, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Those
like,
people must not have a lot of music to listen to these days.
yeah, like they're like, you know, they can listen to, I'm very replaceable to them. I'm very disposable to them. And those people I don't really care for, because they're not gonna come to a show. They're not gonna buy merch. They're not
They're
gonna
not
sign
investing
up.
into you anyway.
Yeah, they're not gonna sign up for my Patreon. Like they're strictly on a superficial, um, yay, Christian rap, kumbaya, right? And then it's
Yeah.
like it hits the fan, and it's like, oh, this guy's making me uncomfortable. Unfollow, right? And so, yeah. So no, man, I think the people that rock with me and people that have gathered value from my YouTube channel, my music, they're there for the long haul, and they're changing, and they're evolving, and they're growing, and I'm so encouraged by them, and we're having a lot of just tough conversations of them trying to reconcile these ideas and figure these things out. And I'm hopeful because of them. I am hopeful. Like, and I
Mhm.
think you can make the same argument where I think like a guy like Lecrae becomes this bridge between these two different worlds, right? This white evangelical world and like the rest of, you know, hip hop, you know what I mean? Like, and like everybody, so he's this bridge. And I think a lot of people, because of Christian hip hop, who are open and humble, have evolved and their views have changed,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a beautiful thing. So my audience, I think, will always be my audience. I've lost friends over this stuff. I will say that. Like,
Wow.
there's like people who are like, you know, that just say wild stuff. You know what I mean? I'm just like, wow, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you really just said that. And
Yeah.
this is how I know if somebody's really a fan. If they're not willing to hop on a call with me, they're probably not a fan. You know what I mean? If I'm
Yeah.
willing to take it off the internet and I'm saying, let's talk face to face, bro. And they're like, oh no, I can't because I'm not comfortable talking on Zoom. Well, then you could be a freaking bot for all I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially with the platform and the pedestal that people put artists on. You
Right.
have the artist saying, "I'll call you right now."
Right.
Oh, no. Like what other person in music could you think of? Anybody, high profile, celebrity, artist, whatever. Hey, I'll call you on Zoom to hash it out. Nah, man, I'm good. I got excuses. Nah, you'd figure it out.
Right.
This was a point that I forgot before, but for a lot of people who don't necessarily, believe black people, like you said before, I think Christian hip hop is the perfect gateway and genre to do this because people have preconceived notions of rappers anyway. Oh, rappers, all they do is they curse or they talk about drugs or,
Yeah.
they exploit women, they do whatever. But
Right.
meanwhile, we have hip hop that's Christian done predominantly by black individuals and great fathers. They're doing community work. They're not doing drugs. They're not doing all these things that people stereotype the African American community that they see rappers do or athletes do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think, that it's not just, you can see a whole community of Christian African American people who are doing things the quote unquote right way to people who think that they're doing everything the wrong way. And if you don't believe those people, then you just don't want to believe them at all.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, bro. I think that when we look at drug use or alcohol use or whatever those like societal ills that Christians have, right?
Mhm.
We act like blacks and whites don't use drugs at the same rates or don't use alcohol at the same rates. Like, people party, people turn up, people without God who are trying to self-medicate. Like, it happens. So there is this like caricature in hip hop, and maybe it's because of like the escapism attached to it. But you're totally right. Christian hip hop
Yeah.
completely shatters those stereotypes. And so what do you have? You have a bunch of guys who are entrepreneurs, husbands, and fathers. Entrepreneurs, capitalists. We're all capitalists, by the way. What are we trying to do? We're trying to sell you something. This is a funnel, baby.
Right.
At the end of the day, we need you to buy something. You know what I mean? Even if it's just the Spotify stream, right? So it's like we're entrepreneurs, we're capitalists, we're husbands, we love Jesus, we're fathers, we're in church. Most of us don't have no crazy, side live with no, you know what I mean? Like no, like the
Live,
majority of us aren't getting stoned on the weekends and partying or sleeping
living
around.
you're actually living the American dream, the white picket fence American dream. A lot of people would say, oh, I can't mess with people unless they're doing that.
And then we say, hey, by the way, not everybody is treated equal here. Hey, by the way, there's some things we still need to undo and some things that we can fix right now. Legislatively, we can fix. By the way, these marches, you may think they're stupid, but they're actually helpful. And here are all the things that they've changed, right? 8 can't wait. That those things are actually getting passed. Like that stuff is actually getting, chokeholds are literally getting banned across state lines. There's de-escalation tactics are being more learned and being elevated by a lot of police officers. Breonna's law, which bans no-knock warrants, got passed in Louisville, Kentucky. All the officers in the George Floyd case got charged. Remember, they weren't charged initially,
Right.
right? The one of the officers in the Breonna Taylor thing got dismissed. They're seeing if they're going to file charges. So to say that that there aren't changes happening, to say that there isn't positive things happening that will benefit everybody, by the way. Banning chokeholds is a win for everybody. Like a police officer having to learn to speak to you and not go to straight escalation and talking to you like he's crazy is going to benefit everybody. It's going to benefit white, black, Mexican,
Mm-hmm.
everybody. So I think to say like, oh, what they're just complaining, there's nothing's good coming out. It's like, fam, like you're clearly not listening and you're clearly not paying attention, because the things that are happening, even the police officers, and I've been in these NAACP Zoom calls with the chief of police around here and all these things, even they're saying, oh yeah, we got rid of chokeholds right away. Like we knew that we needed to get rid of that. We knew we needed to get more de-escalation training. We knew. So it's like there is reform happening right before our eyes. And these are good things. These are good things. They may not be the gospel is spreading and revival is breaking out. Like it may not be that, but these are things that are going to positively benefit our kids and our grandkids moving forward. Even Trump passing a bill to give police departments incentives for further de-escalation training. Like that's huge, man. Like that's
That's
a
a big
good
deal.
thing. You know what I mean? I think he could have gone further, but that's a good thing. And so I think there's a lot of good stuff happening that makes me hopeful that the world that our kids will grow up in will be better, and there will be less racism. There will be less classifying somebody, because then the consequences will be more intense. If you got a body cam on, you get disciplined for touching your body cam or tampering with your body cam, and we got footage of you talking reckless to my son, you're gonna get in trouble. You know what I'm saying? And if the police officer doesn't report you, if he now he's obligated to report you, and if he doesn't report you, he's going to get in trouble. I feel way more comfortable as a parent of a black son than before. So that's what I'm saying. Like, why would we not want, as a parent, you should be like, yeah, that's great. I don't want my son spoken to in a rude, disrespectful manner by police, right? Like some
Yeah.
kid that's on a power trip who didn't have to go to college, who didn't have to do it. Dude, in most states, it requires more hours of training to be a barber or a freaking, hairstylist than it does to become a police officer. So like, why don't we want better training? Why don't we want these things changed? I think we all do. I think we actually all do want the same things. We're just so polarized by the packaging because we're not used to seeing black people empowered.
Where can people interact with you, speak to you, plug something, give a final thought?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to get a hold of me is to just sign up for our Patreon. We do weekly calls, weekly music reviews. Amazing community there. Some huge artists that are a part of that. I mean, you got guys like Nick D, you got guys like Bats, you got guys like Jeremy Passion, Ray Rock. So the best way is to get with me on my Patreon community. We do weekly Zoom calls and we do Family Friday. And sometimes there's guests that come through, like Chad Smith just came through and did a private Zoom call. I don't know if you guys know Chad Smith, millions of followers. He's always over here, did a Zoom call with us. You know what I mean? And so that is super dope. That's the best way. The second best way, if you have questions about this stuff, you could just watch my frequently and ask questions about racism and you're not sure how this all works, and watch that, DM me, I'll hop on a Zoom call with you. That's if you got questions. I'm not just trying to be on random Zoom call becoming friends with random people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he doesn't like doing this.
Yeah.
It's got to be important.
I like the people and I like doing it. It's just the Patreon is a streamlined way to do it. But yeah, man, KingsDreamENT.com. That's everything is there. The newest music, the newest merchandise, the link to the Patreon, kingsdreament.com is the best way to find everything. And a lot of new music on the way, man. We got music from John Keith that's coming very, very soon. We got Paul Russell music coming. We got music from me and a special collaboration record that I'm not going to reveal who it is just yet, but I'm doing a collab album with somebody that most people are very familiar or should be very familiar with. And so, yeah, man, there's a lot of cool stuff in the works.
ABC, always be closing. That you just nailed it. All right. So Ruslan, thanks for joining me, man. All right, everybody. That was Community During. I would like to thank Kadence of Die Daily, AI the Anomaly of God Over Money, and Ruslan, the owner of King's Dream. I thought this was a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for coming in the chat and asking questions, leaving feedback, watching the whole thing. I hope this was helpful and informing. Please share it. Let everyone else know. We're going to have it on Facebook and YouTube eventually. My name is Justin Sarachik. You can check me out on Instagram. I know that's really hard to spell. So follow Rapzilla everywhere, subscribe, and stay tuned for these stories. Next week, we're going to be doing this again. I don't know who's going to be here, but let's focus in now. All right. Peace, everybody. Be safe.